And you're live.
Thank you. This is the FY 2023 Budget Committee Conference, and we are down to just a couple of sections before we're ready to literally shake hands. And with that, I would like to have Stephanie go through some sections that she had to redraft, like the end of year construct, as is well known by now. Revenues for this fiscal year are coming in very robust relative to the January forecast, and therefore we had already in the budget adjustment, I think it was 64 million. We had 65 that we had anticipated. Some was the swapping and the ARPA appropriations, as well as the road repayment, the redeeming of the bond, etc. So we now know that the estimates are going to be much higher as it relates to the available revenues, but until they're official, we really have to treat them in a contingent budget fashion. But at this point, it seems everybody is very confident that we are talking about revenues that are significantly higher than the 65 million that we had already anticipated, and probably approaching or around 100 million more than that. So that is influencing how we're going to close out the end of the year. And so with that, Stephanie wants to take us to her attempt to give us a year-end construct.
So section 102, page 22 of the draft that you have in front of you. This is amending the construct that was in the budget adjustment. We've done parts of this already in discussions in the conference committee. There's a few technical changes in the first part where we should probably say to the extent available, even though revenues are looking very good, it is a contingent structure. The committee needs to tell me if this is okay. At the top of page 23, I've rounded up two of the appropriations. These are estimates, and we typically do the end of year construct in sort of round numbers. And so if that's okay, I would round up the Medicaid piece to 10 million and the correctional industries to 1.9 even. But if the committee does not want to round them, that's fine too. We can go back to the numbers that are originally there. It was easier for me to do the adding and telling you where you were if they were rounded.
Okay, so you
rounding is fine with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're fine. Also,
at the bottom of page 23.
Can you just start at the beginning? So
okay.
The first 86 million of unreserved shall remain and carry forward.
So yes, the 86 million was always in the construct of the budget adjustment, and the 23 budget is built on 86 million coming forward.
Okay.
That was within the revenue forecast. That's not contingent.
Okay, that's
the contingent begins in subsection B. Number 1 is the 850 that is going to not have a deficit open in the cannabis regulatory fund. 1.7 is the state liability deficit being paid off. Number 3 at the top of page 23, 1.9, paying off the deficit in correctional industries. 10 million is the construct around Medicaid that we moved in the budget adjustment here.
And we are keeping that.
And we are keeping that. 5 is the amendment that you've agreed to earlier. This is, you held 25 for debt, and now you're specifying that 5 million of that 20 is for the property management, the payoff of those remaining uncovered by a plan piece in property management, and 20 million for the capital, for the callable bonds on the top of page 24. That notwithstanding, that's in yellow, that refers to the cash fund section, because the cash fund is set up to have any reduction in debt service go into it as a result of redeemed bonds. But in FY23, you can't do that. You've already built that into the debt service line. So it's in FY24 going forward.
And that's about the 6 million figure that would be in 24.
That's the estimate for 24, but the 325, that would be the estimate for 23. We just didn't want to, we've already booked that in the debt service line, so you can't sweep that into the cash fund. That's what the purpose of the notwithstanding is.
Okay,
In the struck section 6, those are the pieces that we've already talked about that can't be swapped because they're already spending into them. The new section 6 on page 25, we've already talked about this as well, but this is moving the childcare retention payments that were in ARPA in the budget adjustment into the general fund construct here, because we can't seem to create a structure of that is ARPA eligible, given the desires of how you want that structured. So it's a better fit for general fund. And then the real decision-making starts at basically at the top of page 26. We talked about, and we moved the 9.6 million of judiciary pieces into the general fund. They were in the ARPA tally, but because of the swap business, we had to do a little bit of rearranging to come to balance. The first question, well, actually, this one is decided this morning. Number 8, you did decide to do the $10 million.
in water.
Well, 10 million of lower ARPA for housing. So this will be a housing appropriation in number 8. And so through number 8 gets you basically to the same size as a list that you had in budget adjustment. With the rounding, it comes to $65.05 million of numbers 1 through 8 in subsection B. And then starting 9, 10, 11, and 12, we had talked about the workers' compensation fund deficit being paid off. So that's the question mark. Do you want to do $6 million or a different number? There has been discussion at some point about reserving some amount of money for emergency or transitional housing.
Yeah.
Number 11 is, I didn't highlight because you have actually made that decision to move the IT pieces into the modernization fund and the language that went there. And then number 12 would be putting money into the cash fund. And if you did those 9, 10, 11, and 12 at the numbers that they are as estimates here, then your total for this list would be $156.3 million, which is roughly in line with what we're seeing for the revenue overage.
So we need to go back, and you have in 10, the 10 million reserved for emergency or transitional health.
Yeah.
You had asked whether we wanted to, the 6 million would basically share that deficit.
That would, in number 9, the 6 million would eliminate the workers' comp deficit.
BRAF goes away.
So the 10 million was to help us deal with the reality that with the clawback on ERAP, that we would probably, it would have a shortening period relative to when permanent housing comes online. So these are the amounts that we've talked about. I guess, Stephanie, you're saying, do we want to agree to this split or move them?
Yes, because these, the conversations were sort of hard conversations. And so, the workers' comp was talked about in a range, the housing was talked about in a range. And I just filled in a number to get to a number that's close to the total for the cash fund piece. So I want to make sure that these are consistent with what the design.
So a question, Senator Kitchell, a couple of questions. On number 10, related to the emergency and or transitional housing, given our anticipated shortfall for ERAP, the way, if we chose to use it, so we're reserving it.
Yes.
And then we would then have to make an affirmative decision next year, presumably through the budget process, to unreserve it and use it in the fashion that is proposed. Is that correct?
Unless we did budget adjustment.
But CAA, yeah. But so we don't need to say anything here about how it'll be unreserved. It's just sitting there and we can access it as we choose.
Yeah, that was our thinking, is that we would reserve it, because there's so many unknowns at this point, but it would give us the capacity to address the fact that money that we thought we had is being clawed back. So, so I would think we would have plenty of ERAP until we get back on budget adjustment.
Yeah, and then my only other thought there is we have heard testimony that the ERAP money may have evaporated by the end of March, which will leave us 3 months in FY '23 unaccounted for, and the current burn rate on that is 5 million a month, which means we don't get to the end of the year with just 10 million. We had talked about it being 15. So a thought could be not to put quite as much into the workers' comp fund and hold 15 in number 10. If we didn't want to use all of 15 there, we could then transfer it, say, back to the workers' comp or other debt relief areas. But the way this is structured right now, it proposes to put 6 into workers' comp and only 10.
That's right, that's right. And originally we had done 2 out of the 6.
Yeah.
So
But do you see what I'm saying? If we're having a shortfall, we can't even get to the end of the fiscal year in the ERAP transitional housing program.
I would assume if it's good through March, we've got April, May, and June. So, right?
Right, and it's costing us 5 million a month.
Well, yeah, because you're getting into spring, the question becomes one of, is that burn rate gonna stay at the 5 million through May and June? And if we want, we can, and that was really what Stephanie's question is, then do we want to change that split between, as she has just sort of tentatively put it down. I would like to stay with at least the 2 million, and it seems like with that burn rate should influence, and I think we're gonna have to look at some policy as it would relate to what happens after July 1st, to be honest, in terms of a program that we've been able to support because of the millions. I mean, it was over, what was the temporary housing at one point was over 100 million? Was it the first year with CRF?
It was astonishingly expensive. I don't remember.
Yeah, I believe it was over $100 million.
But my point is, if we moved and we could leave the 2 million in workers' comp and move 4 into an additional.
Well, I guess that was my question, whether we go back and just keep the 2. I don't.
You can also spend a little bit more than the 156 if you were inclined to.
Well, that's true. Stephanie pointed out we still have a little bit more on the bottom line because we think it's going to be close to 160. So we could, can we do a contingent?
Well, if you were, it's just what your total is, you're comfortable with it. You could do 15 on the housing and 3 on the workers' comp.
Yeah.
And that would net you up, what, $2 million?
$2 million, yeah. That seems like, I would like to at least stay with the 2 million on the workers' comp, and then we can move up to the 15 reserved.
Okay, thank you. I would like to do that. And just noting, it's just reserved. And if we don't use it, we can move it to other needs.
Yeah.
As opposed to once we put it in the workers' comp fund, it's there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make those, Chrissy's probably making those changes as we speak. So we're doing 2 million right now to transfer to the workers' comp. we're reserving the 15 million for if it's not, if it's not needed, then we can always revisit and put more on internal. So, but at least if it's reserved, it gives us the capacity to address what can be at this point somewhat of an unknown need.
And then your total is 157.3.
Okay. So, and then we have the 25 million into the capital expenditure cash fund. To get to the total.
Yes.
So everybody comfortable with that? We'll close it out.
Yeah, Peter, Kimberly.
Yes, we are. Thank you. We can close that.
All right. So shall we keep going?
So that was the only open section aside from G300 related to S11.
Yes.
And so now with this document, you have an hour or before Senator Kitchell has an hour, the rest of you have time to review the document.
Did we have any outstanding,
The other outstanding question was about those positions, and we're running them down.
on the
in terms of
AOT?
and the ACCD.
Yeah, okay. All right, so then I guess we could take just spend some time reviewing the document and then.
And it should, I believe we're posting it, so that folks can read language and.
It is posted.
Okay, even with those changes we just made?
No, not quite. It's this document, but the next iteration for 330 will have the changes that we just talked about and more fully.
So I guess at this point, we can adjourn this conference committee and we will reconvene. I would like to reconvene like at 3:15 at the latest, so I definitely have to leave at 3:30. So 3:15, does that sound all right? And I have the signature page right here in anticipation.
Okay, terrific. And we will,
And you know what I'm gonna suggest, at 3:15, we all go outside on the porch of the Joint Fiscal Office and sign the document.
I love that. Thank
And
you.
that way we'll be outside, so we don't need to worry about, the risk of COVID. Will be masked, but we can do it, all 6 of us. It just seems like we should try to be, as normal as possible. So if that sounds all right to you, we will meet you at 3:15.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to adjourn.